Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at Midori Farm's Community Farm event number 4. And this time, instead of being out in Kutsuki, Japan at my farm, Midori Farm, we are here in the city. Well, I am in Kyoto City, and we're speaking with two lovely farmers who are out in the Keihoku area of Kyoto. And we're going to talk about our farming ways and our goals and our triumphs and our trials. So I hope that you all can enjoy the talk and use the chat function to ask questions and interact. And if you're joining us on the YouTube channel, thank you very much for joining. Please like and subscribe to support us. And let's get right to it. Today we're talking with Zenryu and Ava from Hello Farm Organics. As I said, they're based in Keihoku. And I'd like to hear more about you guys. So let's get started. Please tell me, where is Hello Farm Organics exactly located?
Yeah, we located in Kyoto. It's north of from the Kyoto city, about 40 minutes drive from the city.
Okay.
We're up in the mountains in a little community called Shuzan is like the closest bus terminal from us. Shuzan.
Shuzan, okay. And would you go up Gojo Street, Route 5 there to get to you, or?
162.
162. Okay. I'd have to look at a map. But about 40 minutes, that's not too bad. And
quite isolated area.
Okay. Well, I'm over an hour from my farm, so it doesn't seem so bad, but I guess it just depends. So how long have you been there, and how long have you been farming?
You want to take turns? Okay, so we've been at this location for 9 years. However, we have also farmed elsewhere in the world at different points in our lives, but for this location, yeah, 9 years now.
Okay. And Zenryu, were you farming before you met Ava?
Yeah, actually, I am Buddhist monk, and yes, so I was before I met her, I was in I live in a monastery actually, Buddhist monastery. But I was growing the vegetable for my life.
I see. And then how and when did Hello Farm Organics start?
So I was farming in Canada before I came here. I had my own business for 4 years, and I apprenticed for years before that. And when I sold my share of my business to my business partner to finance the flight to Japan, I came here to find work 12 years ago now. So I've been in Japan 12 years. The very first month I arrived in Japan, I met Zenryu. And he was working at a lodge up in Nikko, Tochigi Prefecture, like in a hotel, kind of hostel. And so I met him there, and like within a month, I was already like working their soil with a rototiller, like making a garden bed. It's like I just like can't not grow things. It's like in my I did not anticipate farming in Japan at all, but because he has like, he's always grown things and I've grown things forever. It just happens so fast. Like wherever I've lived in Japan, I've always been breaking soil somewhere. Oh yeah, so then, yeah, a few years after we, developed a relationship, and then we moved in together. Yeah, and then eventually, so I've been here 12 years, and 10 of those years. Because he was farming on another farm, help as a professional worker for a time. So about 10 years we've been officially growing food together.
Okay, well, that's great. And Hello Farm Organics, the name started about 9 or 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Yes, since after the Tohoku disaster, yeah, we moved from the Ibaraki prefecture.
Were you in Tohoku when that happened?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so we were living in Ibaraki Prefecture in Tsukuba. I was teaching at an international school there, and Zenryu was working on a big organic farm. And when the Fukushima disaster happened, as you know, it was very scary, especially with the radiation, the contamination, and we just so desperately wanted healthy, safe food to eat and even water to drink. Like there was so much lack of information about the safety of food. So I finished my contract and we quickly evacuated permanently south back to Kansai. And in that process, we met, Zenryu found Sakanotochu on the slope. It's the distributor they're an organic distributor. But at the time they had a side project to relocate farmers from Tohoku. So we qualified for a bit of assistance. Like they had found this house for us, they found land, they found buyers for us, and of course them being one of them. So because Zenryu had been working on an organic farm and we were evacuees, we got this help to settle here. And the project was called the Hello Farm Project. So we kept the name Hello Farm and we just made it Hello Farm Organics. So that's actually, we adopted that name from this amazing project at Sakanotochu on the slope. That was their brainchild, actually, to do this.
I'm so impressed that something so wonderful could have blossomed from such a tragedy as that. I went up there just after, during the Golden Week. I think that was 3/11, wasn't it? The tidal wave and everything happened. And I went up there about a month and a half, 2 months later. To deliver supplies and things. And I was silent the whole time I was there. I just couldn't get over the devastation and the people's faces. And what touched me the most was how the tsunami had just devastated so much farmland. I mean, the amount of seawater in the soil and everything, rendering it just useless and things like that. And then plus, people don't know whether they can eat the food or the seafood or the water and things like that. So there was a lot of stress, a lot of tragedy going on at that time. So I'm so glad to hear your story and find that, you know, On the Slope was able to arrange something to assist people. I know there were several programs like that going on around Japan. Like I said, that Hello Farm Organics could move and set up shop and become so successful after that. That's a real success story in my mind. Yeah.
We've really grown with Sakanotochu. Like they were a fledgling organization at the time. I think that they were only in their second or third year, right? In 2011. And we've really grown together to, you know, expand the organic movement in Kansai and develop networks of transportation and new farmer training and sharing information. I mean, they really have pioneered, I think, the organic movement, especially in Kansai, but I would say for Japan, they've been amazing and supporting, so supportive of new farmers or landless farmers as we were at the time.
That's great. Sakanotochu, I'll put some notes about them in the meeting notes after we're done here. So make sure to credit them for that. Thank you. Okay, so I understand where you guys are now. Maybe you can tell me a little bit what's going on now. What do you guys grow?
You want to talk about that?
Yes, we grow all kind of vegetable. We call that's called tahimok. Japanese is many kind, and we grow and trying to eat everything. We grow.
I understand.
Self-sufficient.
Self-sufficient is a big purpose for the growing vegetable.
Well, it's our aim. Yeah, I wouldn't say we're completely self-sufficient, but we're working towards it.
At least for the vegetables.
Yeah.
Well, to give, go ahead.
Well, the Zenryu said we grow many different kinds. A few years ago, I calculated we have about 100 different varieties of vegetables, but tomatoes alone, we have 15 to 20, it depends on but we do grow a huge spectrum of vegetables, and most are heirloom or heritage varieties for Japan. That's actually one area of our real commitment and passion project is to grow and use local heirloom heritage varieties as a niche.
Yeah, in our discussion before we started, you mentioned soil, seed saving, and sustainability. I really like that as kind of a kind of slogan for you guys to follow and things like that. I think those are three pillars of most organic farmers: is where do your seeds come from, how is your soil, and how sustainable is your system. So I think that's really great. How much seed saving are you guys able to do? Like, what percentage of your 100 varieties do you think you're saving seeds for?
Well, like at different years, depending, because we experiment every year. I'm always learning. I try to aim to learn 1 or 2 new varieties a year of how to save it. And so we're up to about 50 different varieties that we save our own seed right now. Like okra, cucumber, garlic, potatoes, those are easy ones. But we have like, bush beans, climbing beans. The kuro tamba edamame is a really important one because we make this, with this black soybean, we make miso, and we do workshops in the winter to make miso with it. Tomatoes, heirloom tomatoes, makua, cilantro, dill, head lettuce, peppers. Yeah, we're just trying to expand every year. It really is a work in progress because, like with cucurbits, certain varieties, you really need to isolate them, and we just don't have that system or space yet to isolate certain varieties. But yeah, it's a work in progress.
Well, I gotta say, from the vegetables you mentioned, and I'm sure there's several people at home who aren't aware of what seed saving exactly is or why people do it. I think seed saving, in my perspective, is very important for a farmer because they can find the plants that grow the best for them. I mean, the variety of plants, let's say beefsteak tomatoes grow really, really well for me. Well, I can then take my biggest and best beefsteak tomato plant, my biggest and best beefsteak tomato off that plant, save those seeds, and then it's like, it's not a clone, but basically you're getting that genetic formula for your next year's round of tomatoes. And then if you do that over several years, suddenly your tomato plants are thriving because you've saved the ones that are strongest and best in that environment. So I think seed saving is a crucial factor for a lot of organic farmers' success. It is, however, a little more complicated than maybe you've let on. A lot of the vegetables you mentioned, not so difficult to make, but cucumbers, that's not an easy one to save, I don't think.
No, in fact, we've had like mediocre success. So,
some year really good.
Some years really good. Like if we're able to isolate the cucumbers away from other gardens, like you need like, I think it's like 50 meters, probably more, I think, between other cucurbits varieties.
Yeah.
So I think it might be more than that.
Yeah. I applaud you, and I'm very impressed. I think it's wonderful to do seed saving. It's especially now that a lot of seeds are actually controlled. We're only allowed to buy certain kinds of seeds, and a lot of seed saving is poo-pooed, if not forbidden or taboo or something. I think it's very important that communities do save their seeds and do allow people access to them, or some sort of a seed bank, if you will, because without such genetic diversity for our fields, when climate change wreaks havoc on us, we won't be able to adapt otherwise. I mean, genetically modified seeds and hybrid seeds and F1 seeds, for those of you at home, if you were to take a tomato plant from a home center, for example, and plant it in your garden, if it's a hybrid or an F1, it might grow beautiful, delicious tomatoes, but the next year if you try to plant that seed, it's not going to grow the same variety. It's going to grow one of the varieties that was in that genetic cocktail that made up that hybrid. And it may not be a very nice, juicy tomato at all. It might just be like the hardy one that grows really well, but tastes terrible or something like that. So it's very important that people do have heirloom seeds, like you were mentioning, because some of those seeds are over 100 years old. And that's a real testament to how wonderful seed saving is, and how people over the years have found and isolated varieties, and were able to share them with the world. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, I would say, in fact, with climate change becoming more and more of a very serious factor for farmers, leaning on that genetic strength of your localized seed that you have been saving year after year, it creates genetically strong varieties that can withstand like the crazy amounts of rain during Japan's rainy season, or they can withstand the bacterial, what's it called? Bacterial wilt, for example.
Varicillium wilt or powdery mildew. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a vascular disease that every year, it travels through water and bacteria through the soil. And that's with the rainy season, it's inevitable that, especially with F1s, you're going to get those diseases. But if you're growing locally raised and you're saving that strong genetic maybe samples each year, like you said, take the best, healthiest, strongest sample of your tomato, then they're going to do better. And in fact, this year, in this one garden, we have multiple gardens, but in one garden are manganji peppers and what's the eggplant that's doing really, really well? Kamonasu.
I love kamonasu. So that's the ball. The eggplants are so good.
And Mizunasu, water eggplant. All of those are heritage heirloom varieties from Kyoto, and they're all doing very well. Whereas like the tomatoes, they're all dead now because, of disease and the weather, but they're not a local, tomatoes aren't native to Japan, obviously. But I think it's a real testimony to the importance of saving your local seed, especially with climate change. And then of course you're talking a bit about politics, the resistance to the control, right? I mean, we've had volunteers here from Argentina, and they told us it's illegal to save their own tomato seed in Argentina. Illegal, like it's ridiculous. So,
especially considering a lot of tomato varieties probably came from Argentina.
I know, it's like native, right? I mean, that was years ago. I'm hoping that's changed, but I mean, I really think it's such a it's like power to the people, save your seed.
That's right. And I think you also mentioned a point I'd just like to touch on briefly. What a lot of people don't realize about farmers is we're not only trying to grow vegetables in the dirt and the weather, but we're most often, trying to grow something that is not indigenous or native to where we're growing it. And I don't just mean, I'm up in the mountains, it would do much better in Kyoto City in the valleys where it's warmer. I'm not just saying that. I mean, things like tomatoes and peppers and potatoes, all coming from South America, squash and cucurbits mainly from South America. So we're not only dealing with different climates, but different countries and different everything. So farmers are working incredibly hard to do something with a seed that most people wouldn't be able to do. And we struggle, we have a lot of difficulty with it because of the differences in weather or soil or insects or animals or whatever else is around. So farmers are constantly challenged, especially farmers like you two who are growing 100 different varieties of something. I mean, that's a lot of balls in the air to keep going when the insects come around, or when the typhoons or the weather changes and things like that. My applause to you. I mean, really, that's amazing.
It does seem like a lot, but actually there's strength in variety. So for example, if the tomatoes have all failed at this point, we have other gardens, tomatoes are doing well, but let's say your tomatoes fail, well then your peppers might do okay. We might lose all the baby leaf for a month, but then the potatoes did well. So there's strength in having the variety. And also it's really important for the rotation, the crop rotation, for soil health, not depleting nutrition. So actually, I do recommend that farmers grow a variety of things, not to put all your eggs in one basket. Like monocultures are like the death of soil if you're doing it same thing every single year. And then you end up having to add chemical fertilizers to make up for the depletion of nutrition. So it's important. It's like an organic concept, is that the crop rotation is really important.
And one other reason would be, of course, for pests. I mean, if you have a pest in the soil that likes to eat your potatoes and you plant potatoes there the next year, that pest is even stronger and bigger. So that's another reason for crop rotation and variety of crops as well.
Exactly.
Can I ask you, we've talked about seed saving and some varieties. What do you do for soil fertility? What's your regimen like?
For soil, what do we do to build strong soil?
Strong soil.
So I have to say we've evolved and changed a lot in how we approach our soil fertility. I've done like a complete 180 on how I think about soil from my time in Canada to Japan. We used to think about more like the macronutrients, like nitrogen, phosphorus, the nutrients, and
Calcium,
then soil,
yeah.
The tilth, like is it loam, heavy clay? Those are all important, but actually they pale in comparison to the microbiome health of your soil, which is like bacteria, the living things in the soil. So Zenryu is really our expert on that. He has really pushed our farm to explore how to build soil living biomes and bacteria. And what are some of the things like we add and put in the soil to build bacteria?
Yeah, all like natural material, of course. And especially I learned a lot about weed compost. We collect all the weed, cut the weed, we collect them and then make a fermentation with a nuka. Nuka is rice bran, and make a fermentation. And that after the completely become compost, we add into the soil. And also we use kakigara powder. Kakigara powder is what you call oyster shell.
Oh yeah, oyster shell, like brown.
Calcium.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and we trying to do not add any animal fertilizer.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's
Yeah,
great. And do you grow any cover crops or anything like that?
Just a second. You mean for soil fertility? Yeah. Cover crops sometimes for the rotation.
Like
Clover.
Yeah, we tried rye.
Oh, okay. Winter rye.
Actually, not rye.
And oats.
green manure.
Green manure. And then you just till that back into the soil when it gets about 20 centimeters tall or something like that.
Yes, ideally, if you have a machine, what's it called?
Like what's it called?
Tiller?
To mulch it. Mulches it. No, like.
Oh, a mulcher. Okay.
Hammer, like a hammer mower.
Hammer mower.
Makes.
Yeah, ideally we can get it kind of too expensive, so we use weed whacker.
Weed whacker, just knock it down. I see. Let me ask you a question. Oh, go ahead, Ava.
Well, there's other things. We add so many other things to the soil. Like we've recently discovered biochar. What's it in Nihongo?
Oh yeah, that's kuntan.
Kuntan, yeah.
That's like kind of new. Well, I mean, Zenryu's been aware of it, but now we're making our own, and it's so exciting. And I've been reading about it and learning.
I'm using many years that called kassedan powder. It's a charcoal powder. It's a charcoal. It's a really good for the soil.
Yeah.
Just little amount. And then this year we are trying to make everything from the rice husk.
Yeah, momigara. Yeah.
Momigara charcoal is the best.
Now, I gotta say, momigara or rice husks is something a lot of people in the West aren't very familiar with at all. Whereas Ava and I are probably seeing loads of hay fields and hay bales and things like that. Well, basically that's because people harvest a lot of grasses to feed cows and horses and things like that in our country. But also the production of wheat would also produce a lot of wheat stalks and things like that that could also be used as mulches or compost and things like that. Whereas, of course, in Japan, we don't have the large grass and wheat fields to get hay. However, they have rice fields. And of course, rice grows on a stalk, and those stalks are available. And a lot of traditional rice farmers and other farmers gather those husks and use them as a green manure or mulch. That's well detailed in Fukuoka-san's book, The One Straw Revolution. But also there's the shell of the rice itself. The seed of the rice has a shell on it called a husk or a hull. And those are taken off, and then you have basically a brown rice. And then if you want that to be white rice, you polish it, and you're left with a brownish powder called nuka. And that's also used, both of those are used in agriculture in different ways. Well, momigata, or the rice husk itself, rice farmers just want to give it away. I mean, they often have way too much of it. So it's a resource that I've been really hunting for a while, and I've finally found a source of organic rice husks in my village, or in my township, I should say. And the man is willing to deliver it for free. And of course, I buy some of his rice. The key factor being is that he's organic, and that was the tough one to find. I found a lot of rice farmers otherwise, but he's organic. So was it difficult for you to locate an organic rice farmer for that?
Actually, we're not using organic for that material at the moment.
Okay.
Well, we do have some organic rice farmers, but like you said, they're far and few in between.
They really are.
We are not certified organic, so just to be clear, that's one reason why we're able to get away with that. However, we're burning it, right, or making it into char, so there's that element as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's okay. And you use that upside down funnel chimney kind of thing to make your biochar?
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks like a lot of fun. I really want to get one of those. I saw it in the shop. I thought, ooh, that's on my wish list. You know, what I've learned in the past is that it makes a really good mulching material. And it also makes a pretty good material, a brown material for my compost. And let me just take a moment to explain about composting, just the basics. I'm no professional, but from what I've learned, that when you want to compost your kitchen scraps or your weeds or something green, as we call it, what you want to do is add a brown, dry carbon element to that compost. For several reasons. It absorbs moisture, it allows airflow and penetration, it gives it more body, and there's actually usually more brown than green in mixes, but everybody has their own sort of recipe. Well, rice husks work very well for that as well. However, rice husks do not break down very, very quickly. They stay in the soil 2 or 3 years before they really kind of break down. They're so fibrous and densely constructed. So what I've found is actually just using them as a mulch. Again, to explain what mulch is anything you put on the surface of the soil that will basically keep moisture in, keep weeds down, and basically offer some sort of protection for the soil from heavy sun days and things like that. So I've been using rice chaff for rice husk for a mulch for a while, and I've just started using it as a brown material in my compost. But there's a very wonderful radio show in the States called You Bet Your Garden by Mike McGrath out of Philadelphia. And I recommend it for anybody who's growing anything, because the guy, he's based in Philly, so he's talking about people who live in the city with a potted plant or a fruit tree or a grass lawn or a small garden all the way up to a farm. So you really get some really great tips, and he's hilarious and he knows everything. And he's got a wonderful website called You Bet Your Garden. And there's questions there where he's been doing this radio show for decades. And it's just backlogged with all the questions that have come in. And so if you have a question, you can just ask his system, and it routes you to his answers and things like that. And I've been wondering for years about rice husks. How can I use them, And somebody had recently said they thought using them as a substitute for perlite is a very good thing. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever used perlite before.
Well, it's sometimes in our potting mix now anyway, that you can buy at Komedi or the stores. So there's
sure.
Perlite, of course, is a rock mineral, in case people are curious about it. But yeah, it's like an additional nutritional,
right.
Yeah.
So it's something, you said you weren't certified organic, neither am I, and I'll never go that route because I don't want to pay the price. I think people can just come out and see for themselves, this is organic, But perlite is organically certified. So like Ava said, it's a naturally occurring mineral that they superheat and it puffs up like popcorn. So if you ever buy a potted plant or a potting soil, you'll see little styrofoam pieces and they're like, what is styrofoam doing in there? That's perlite. And what it does is it helps with drainage. And so it kind of lightens your soil. And I have quite heavy soil where I am. So I've used it a lot because of Mike. I've ordered it online, but it's so expensive here compared to the States. I mean, you could buy like a giant bag as big as yourself for like $5 there, whereas here it costs more like 50. So I've been looking for alternatives. And when I found out, ooh, maybe this Momigata rice husk could be used to lighten my soil, the first thing I thought of was Mike McGrath said, never take your fallen leaves and till them into your soil, because that carbon in your soil is going to sequester the nitrogen from being released and uptaken by your plants. And I am not a soil scientist. I never studied farming, so I believe him. I just took his word for it. So when I thought about that, I thought, well, putting this carbon material rice husk into the soil must have the same effect. It must have a deleterious effect on the nitrogen for my plants. With all plants need nitrogen. It is the foundation for chlorophyll. So without nitrogen, plants just can't survive. So I thought, how am I going to find this answer? It's not in his questions. And then, so I wrote him a message. I wrote him an email. And he responded right back, and we had a great little, exchange. And he said, it should be totally fine. Don't worry about it sequestering nitrogen. And it's really good as a mulch. And I said, yeah, I already knew that. But so if you guys have an excess and you do have some heavier soil, you might consider working it into the soil to kind of lighten it a little bit and increase your drainage. That was my takeaway from that.
Well, actually, since we've been turning it into a biochar, which is basically roasting, I guess you could say roasting the rice husk, we've learned why the locals have been integrating it into soil for so long. Like this, we're talking like 100 years, maybe more. I don't know. It's probably way more than that. Yeah, and we found out that it's because it not only like helps retain moisture in the soil, but the surface area, if you were to look under a microscope, a biochar husk has a huge surface area, and that creates space for bacteria to connect to and to hold tight, in addition to being a moist environment. So it actually creates the perfect biome situation, habitat for beneficial bacteria. Plus it apparently it helps hold whatever nutrients are already in the soil. So it doesn't add nutrients, it holds what's already there. So the nitrogen, the phosphorus that are so critical to plant growth. And especially in an environment like this where there's a lot of rain and like the water, sometimes literally our beds are underwater for days in the rain. Biochar holds it tight so it doesn't leach away and flow away. So there's so many good cases for using biochar. And then there's other things too, like apparently it holds carbon better in the soil, so you're like mitigating climate change. Like apparently there's a whole host of really great reasons to use biochar in the soil.
Yeah, that's great. I've used, what's the Japanese for the biochar again? Guntan, yes. I've used that for a few years when I had some beds, but I recently moved to an abandoned rice field and I had to turn that into a vegetable field. And boy, the flooding issues have been terrible, terrible. I had to go through so much pain and heartache through that. And that's why I was trying to lighten my soil with just the raw Momigata. But I'm definitely going to try some biochar after hearing what you just said, because that's very exciting. And I'm all about, it's there, it's in the soil, it's in the environment already. You just have to find a way for your plants to find it and get it and to keep it. And I really believe in mulching and green manures and things like that too. Do you guys, what was I gonna say? Oh, it just flew right out of my mind. Do you guys use a proper tractor?
We don't have the tractor.
Wow, you have quite a large space for no tractor.
I was farming about three tons. I don't know in English.
Tons.
Yeah.
It's a rice field called tan, right? So about 3
Right.
standard size rice fields in Japan.
Mm-hmm. And then we have a rotiller, small rotiller. That's it.
Rototiller.
Rotiller.
Okay. Just a
It's very-
small one. Okay.
Yeah, we're very like hands-on, human labor intensive in the garden.
And especially in Japan, we have to make a raise a bed higher. Yeah, it's all like a hand by the physical work for that, making the bed. That's really hard.
I always tell people that although it's like really labor intensive, we don't waste any space. Like every single plant is cared for really intensely. And so even if one, like let's say one dies, we replace it with something else that might be a companion plant. So there's no wasted space, even though we don't have huge amounts of fields. We do produce a lot of vegetables in a smaller amount of space because it's so intensely grown. And we do, like I said, a lot of companion planting as much as we can as well. And then because you're making raised beds, and by hand, we're so conscientious of never stepping on that bed. Like we're really careful because you don't want to compact the soil. So I think there's a lot of care we put into taking care of what we do have. I think that a lot of times conventional farmers get so big that you're willing to take a 20% loss or a 10% loss, you know? Well, we don't really accept that. We don't want the loss, so we really intensely grow in a smaller space.
I think 20% loss for most conventional farmers is very low. I think people are more closer to 40 or 50% in a lot of cases, as far as being able to be sold at market. You know what I mean? I mean, you might grow 10,000 carrots, but only about 5,000 are market quality, you know, whereas the other ones are ugly and twisted and forked and things like that. So I think a 20% loss for most farmers sounds pretty good, actually. Now, tell me about greenhouses. Are you guys using any of those?
Yes, we do. And basically, we use for the salad mix, baby leaf. Yeah, that's our main crop, by the way.
Is that your main crop? Okay.
Yes. And we seed around August. I'm in the September, autumn time, and then harvesting for winter. Until
you harvest once a week or every day?
Not too big. We don't have too big greenhouse, so we have 2 greenhouses, and so once we plant, we seed it, we harvest one time, and then they grow back. We harvest again for winter. It's like that.
That's great. Do you use any sort of greenhouse or roof over your tomatoes?
We have one spot. We have we kind of using somebody's greenhouse during the summer. It just has a roof.
Yeah,
just
no
roof for the.
Especially larger size of a tomato. The small tomato is okay with that roof.
Yeah.
But large size, yes.
Maybe you could take a moment to explain why a greenhouse or a roof is important for tomatoes.
Well, especially the large beefsteak style tomatoes, they crack pretty easily and they're very susceptible to disease. Like, as we said, they're not native to Japan. And just with the exceptional humidity and the amount of rain, tomatoes are really hard to grow in Japan. And one of the strategies to keep them a little bit drier, a little bit out of the elements, is just to put a roof over them. And it makes a huge difference. Like it extends not only the season an extra month or 2, but it keeps the diseases down. It keeps just overall, they seem to do much better. Now, cherry tomatoes, we kept our own seed for 9 years. We keep collecting. So we've got pretty strong varieties now that can survive outside. They seem to do okay. Less and less cracking every year. This is our best year, actually, with the cracking. There hasn't, but mind you, it has been kind of a dry summer, right?
It's been pretty dry.
Yeah, but basically, cherry tomatoes can seem to do okay outside in Japan. I mean, not as long as in North America in terms of the season like how long the season would be, but they do okay. Whereas the larger or medium-sized beefsteak or romas, we recommend under some kind of roof to keep them out of the elements.
It's been my experience too that, again, I'm just going to explain this in simpler terms. A tomato itself is mostly water. And if it gets too much water, more water than it should, it will crack or explode. I mean, this has happened to most farmers, and that's why we manage how much water it gets by having a roof over it. That way, we still water the plants, of course, but not very often and just enough. And these diseases that Ava's mentioned, there are myriad diseases that tomatoes will come down with. And a lot of it comes from just the water hitting the soil and splashing the soil up onto the leaves. And that's how a lot of bacteria find an entrance to the plant and then further kill it. So tomatoes are babies, and heirlooms are big preemie babies. They're the hardest things to grow, especially the big ones. So I'm struggling with about 11 plants right now, and I've already lost 3. So, you know, I'm doing my best. Okay, tell me about.
We don't associate too much attachment to our tomatoes. We're like, we'll take what we can, and because if you worry about it, it is endless, like constantly disease and struggle. So you just have to go with it and try your best.
Yeah. Yep, that's right. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your irrigation system? How do you water?
For watering? Okay.
Yes, we use water pump for the greenhouses. But used to be our land is everywhere. We have a tree spot of the land, and every land used to be rice field. And we have a access. So if it's dried up really, really dry, we fill up the water.
Oh, you open the gate and you allow the water in just like the rice fields. Okay.
That's about maybe hour, fill up the water, and then release.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. For people who aren't familiar with this, basically rice fields and in a lot of places are built near irrigation ditches, or I should say irrigation ditches are built next to rice fields, and routing water from the mountains, from the natural sources and the rivers to the rice fields is something they've been doing here for centuries. And so basically there's an irrigation ditch right next to the farm with a little sliding gate you can just open, and suddenly all that water rushes into your field and it floods the whole thing. And it takes about an hour, you say?
Yeah,
and then you can close that, and then you've got your water for a week. That's amazing.
It is. I have to say, I'm Canadian. We do not have irrigation canals that I know of in Canada, and it is so convenient and such a brilliant design that I'm kind of considering, if we ever purchase land, I want to build them around all our gardens, because there's no fossil fuels involved. You literally create a dam, flood the field, it's silent, there's no noisy engine, you're getting all this water, and then you don't have to water for a week. It's just a brilliant solution for watering in Japan. I'm going to miss that a lot. We have to build them. Okay.
You do. That's fantastic. That's great. Okay, and tell me about selling your vegetables. Do you do that strictly through On the Slope? Are you doing a farmer's market? Are you doing a little farm stand at your place or friends, CSA? What's your story?
Yeah, there's many places we are selling. Yeah, there's a main sales to the On the Slope. Yeah, that's the main place. And also, we have a few veg shops. Do you know the Musubiya? Musubiya is a ticket. And also, Miroku Shoten is a Miroku Works. It's Suzuki Kentaro. Do you know?
Of course, I know Kentaro. Hi, Kentaro.
Yeah, and also, we have a restaurant. It's the biggest restaurant in this area called Keihoku restaurant, and they buy a lot from us.
I see.
And also Michinoeki is the famous market, local farmers.
The head chef at the Keihoku restaurant is Tajiri-san, and Tajiri Daisuke-san, and he's really committed to buying local organic, and it's kind of new. Like it's only been the last few years he's really made a commitment to that. So we are just so thrilled that he is a part of like working so closely with us, and he's our neighbor, so he can literally like go into the garden and like look around sometimes if he wants to see or pick, or we can. And Zenryu is like a fabulous chef, so he knows like what really works well for cooking, and they have great conversations about developing the menu, and yeah, it's been great.
Oh, that's fantastic. Do you have any CSA customers?
We used to.
Yeah, used to.
But you know, it's a few years ago they changed the shipping charge.
I see.
Increased a lot about all the like takuhai, you know, that's delivery companies. So kind of too much.
Especially
I understand.
Japan Post, the Yubin, they like almost doubled their refrigeration shipping costs just like overnight. So we actually canceled it because it was almost as much to send as it cost just for the vegetables. So we canceled. But if you're a really big group like Sakanoto-chu, I believe they can still get a really good deal because they're dealing with like 2,000 CSA boxes a week, and they're all delivered. But we're small scale. We can't compete with that. So it's okay. We provide Sakanoto-chu with lots of veggies for their CSA box.
For their CSA. Okay.
Yeah. So when people ask us about it and they're like, can we buy veggies from you? We often direct them to our other buyers who are also offering veggie boxes. Like Suzuki-san is also doing a veggie box program.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Also, maybe once in a week we have 3 restaurants. It's a different. I'm sending the box to the restaurants.
Osaka and Fukuoka,
Kyoto.
We used to send quite a bit up even to Tohoku for a while, in Tokyo, but we've kind of we've narrowed it down a little bit, so it's more Kansai, or at least as close to local as possible, to reduce the fossil fuel emissions.
That's great. That's great. I love the formula that you guys have set up. It just works best for your community and for yourselves. That's the best way to go, I think. Okay, I'd like to change gears a little bit. Why don't you, if you would, tell me what's your, I mean, it's hard to say this, and even as a farmer, I know this is going to be tough to answer, but what would you say is some of your major difficulties growing organic?
First of all, this weather in Japan is always that typhoon comes every year and makes big disaster. That's really hard. And also Japan, I feel Japan is a kind of small country, and then like a 70% land is cannot use, meaning only 30% land.
Mountains, yeah.
Agriculture. Even these neighbors, not like a distance with neighbor farmers. They are using the pesticides also, and sometimes we smell that. Yeah, I feel that's the most difficult for me.
Yeah, that's a challenge. And yeah, I mean, extreme weather is becoming more common with climate change, the effects of climate change. So like the 2 greenhouses we talked about, both of them have collapsed in the last 2 years. One collapsed due to record amounts of snow, and we did a GoFundMe campaign to replace that because they're not ours. We're renting them from a neighbor. So we were able to do a bit of fundraising to replace one, plus get a bit of support from the local JA or government. And then the other greenhouse collapsed, really severe wind during a typhoon. So it's like, there's no end. Like every year there's a disaster. Like one year we lost everything to hail. It was like 15 minutes of hail, and that's it. We lost all our spring seedlings in 15 minutes. To me, that's like, that's why I will probably always work off farm as a teacher, because I'm also working as a full-time teacher and just helping out on weekends and holidays here. Zenryu's the main farmer. But yeah, and then like you said, the neighbors with the pesticides, that's an education campaign that will last a lifetime. That's really difficult. which we
That's
actually we probably couldn't be certified organic in Japan just because of that. I mean, literally, you can smell the organochlorines coming off of the rice fields on certain days. Like it's upsetting,
That's
but it's
terrible.
a reality. Mm.
Okay. Now, you've spoken a little bit about having had plans to actually exit Japan or the area anyway. May I ask, what are your plans for next year?
Good question.
Yeah.
Plans, not, what's going to happen. What's your idea? What would you
This
like?
year, this spring, we supposed to moving to the Canada, restart the new life in Canada. But this happening, this COVID-19 is happening, so we kind of we decided stay this summer. And we don't know, no one knows the future, what's going to happening. So we're just planning, maybe next spring, let's move, right? But we don't know. So, and also I'm like a Zen practice Buddhist monk. And the Zen philosophy, we say we never think, we shouldn't think about future. It's a past is not existed and future is not existed. So what we can do is the best we can do this moment. So live
I really like that.
Live moment to moment. So we are here right now, so we can do whatever best we can do.
I really like that, Zenryu. That's a really wonderful takeaway for everybody, I think. But as a farmer, you have to kind of be mindful of, okay, what's going to go next in this bed. So you have to kind of season it with a little practicality, I think. But overall, I think that's a wonderful thing because on the farm, there's so much to be a part of anyway at any given time. So if you're, my favorite thing is when I first arrive at my farm, since I don't live there, I have to drive there only 3 days a week. If I'm not manically busy, which is a lot of the time, but if I have the time, I take the first hour and I just walk the farm and I look at every single plant and notice if there's any new damage, new growth, anything that needs going. It's my most peaceful time of the day. It's meditative because I'm really kind of synchronizing myself with the plants and what's changed over the past couple of days and what do I have to think about. And so being in the present, in the now, I think is one of the most rewarding things. And unfortunately, I can't do it enough. I'd love to just walk the farm the whole time and just, pick a weed here and there and, do some trellising or something. But there's so much work to be done on the farm that it's hard to manage that.
Yeah, I feel that the farming is a really spiritual practice. It's really connected about the spiritual life. Just concentrate moment, right, this moment, and then it's like a oneness with nature. Those kind of feeling you must have, right, during farming.
I agree. And I mean, being an organic farmer just allows you to be that much closer because you're going to see all the insects and the birds and the frogs and the lizards and the snakes and everything else on your fields or near your fields. And it becomes a natural system by itself. I mean, we're not fighting it. We would have to fight it to stop that. And then you really feel more in harmony with all the plants. As Ava mentioned, not monocropping, growing a diversity of plants makes the whole system stronger. And I talked about this with a few people and I tell them, organic farming is not fighting nature. It's like surfing in the ocean. You don't fight the wave. You learn to ride it. You learn to find your natural sweet spot and harmonize with it because you can't fight some things. Like hail coming down, you've just got to pick up the pieces and move on. Disease, insects. For me, it's monkeys. Oh, gosh, just terrible, terrible damage. So, you learn to move on and you learn to make the best of it. And it's really made me, like you, Ava, I appreciate the other half of my life where I'm actually got a steady paycheck because I can pay bills. But the farming thing, I don't think it's ever not going to be a part of my life. I think it's just it's a very addictive thing, like you said at the beginning. And it's a very spiritual thing for me too, Zenryu, as you just said. So I find it incredibly rewarding and fulfilling. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm pretty much at the end of my questions. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about or perhaps ask me or anything?
Well, I guess we didn't really talk too much about the educational component. Another, I think, priority for us is kind of education, not just like consumer education about, eating ugly food is okay, B grade is okay. But there's such a huge amount of either misinformation or misunderstanding or social norms that it just requires a lot of education. So we have our Facebook page, we've got, website, but more importantly is we have a constant flow of volunteers that come here through WOOF Japan. And WOOF means, it's an acronym for Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms. And we've been hosts for these, it's a global kind of network of organic farm volunteers. And we've hosted them for
9 years.
All 9 years?
Yes.
Oh, okay. For 9 years here. We've had hundreds of people come through, and some of them have gone on to become farmers. Some of them have gone on to work in the food industry with, even helping support like distribution organizations or like just in some way. And I feel like as organic farmers, we're not just farming, like we're trying, we must necessarily be involved in education in some way as well. So the volunteering, hosting volunteers is a great way. But we've also maintained some apprentices over the years. So we've had one of our apprentices, she's a local farmer, and she's now taking over part of our fields. And the intention was she would eventually take over all as we exit the country, but clearly we haven't exited yet. But we really think that incubating future farmers and teaching them, training them, exposing them is really important, because the organic movement in Japan, I would say and argue, it's still fledgling. It's still in the beginning stages. I would say it's probably 10 to 20 years behind where it's at in North America. Like the movement is just progressed along a little, I don't know, faster or whatever it is. So the education is really important. And then Zenryu's really good at integrating the spirituality of it and the intention behind it, and taking it slow. I think it's really important. And Chuck, I know you're really involved with some education as well. So maybe you can speak to how important it is that we keep sharing. And like even today's interview is an example of like sharing and education, right? We're not particularly good at it, the education, but we're trying our best. I've had school groups come here. Some of my students, my classes have come up. Yeah, we had an overnight.
Elementary school kids, right?
And middle school. Yeah, I had a whole middle school spend the night here one night.
Wow.
Here in the garden.
Explains, yeah.
Yeah, that was good fun. And my grade 1's class came up. I've had individual kids who've done like personal projects that wanted to come interview and get their hands dirty. So whenever we can, we integrate education wherever we can for those who are interested in want. We don't want to force feed anyone, but
yeah, we feel that really important for developed organic movement. Yeah, whole world, not only in Japan.
And what's your website there if people are interested in learning more or something?
Yeah,
like
it's our name, hellofarmorganics.com. But we're not that active on it.
Facebook.
Yeah, our Facebook page, the same name, Hello Farm Organics, we're more active with putting up a picture here and there. The website is more like for example, when we found out that our soil had a lot of bacteria in it, we were so excited. So I wrote a long post about that. It's more like once in a while, I'll write something significant. So it's not as active, but yeah, those are definitely tools that we use for education. But maybe you can speak to the importance of that too, Chuck. I mean, you want to tell us about all the things that you're doing or some of the ways that you're reaching out to people?
Well, first of all, I'm a father of a 9-year-old, and he's had a lot of influence on me as far as the importance of having a place in the country and having an organic farm and having him on the farm. And I've watched him grow. He doesn't come to the farm very often, but he comes to several times each year. And each year I see him change as far as what his interest is and what he notices, what he's able to do, what he's willing to do, and things like that. So I'm very connected with education as well. I've been a kids teacher for 25 years. And so I find that the farm is one of the most incredible teaching opportunities ever. because it's a very dynamic natural system, and kids are naturally curious about it. They'll see flowers, butterflies, insects, birds, insects, you know, toads, frogs, snakes, lizards, and food, you know, I mean, everything, the whole gamut. And they'll be very interested to ask questions and participate and touch. So this year I've actually gotten a grant from the Heiwado Corporation, and I opened a community farm, which is actually the name of this interview session today, is my community farm event number 4. What I did was I took the money and I invested it in a sweet potato field, a new field that I turned in a fallow field into a sweet potato field over 3 events. And I had a live Zoom event out there. And my basis for this was I'd heard a lot of Japanese people as children, my age, I'm about 50, so people between 35 and 55 had said, you know, when I was a kid in kindergarten, we went out to the sweet potato field and we harvested sweet potatoes, or we picked strawberries or planted rice, the Taoe events and things like that. And as I'd asked people, it seemed like those opportunities were becoming less and less and less. And I felt like, well, the trend over Japan over the past 50 years has been decreasing their interest in agricultural activities, not only as an entertainment or sort of an experience, but also as a profession. We're in dire need of new farmers, especially organic ones. So it was my idea that this grant was given to people who are trying to preserve something. So I decided, well, what better to preserve than a community farm? An opportunity to give people the chance to experience nature and food in such a dynamic and important way. So much like what you're doing is when you allow people the opportunity to come onto the farm, to experience things, to touch things, to eat things, that, I mean, to coin a term, we plant a seed in that person that will always be there for when they're adult. They'll remember that opportunity, because these adults that I spoke to 40 years before they were harvesting sweet potatoes, they remembered that. They enjoyed that. They wanted to have that for their own children. So it's something that I think no matter what profession, whatever your line of work or walk of life, if you were to visit an organic farm, you would enjoy it. You would take away a lot of new information and just find something very rewarding in that. So I think it's an empirical thing that farms are valuable, that they're going to not only provide food, but the opportunity for education. And as an educator, I feel like it's just put the two together, give people the opportunity to come out, have that experience. I don't have to teach them anything. You know, I can tell them, yeah, this is why the tomato grows this way. This is why I plant basil next to the tomato. This is why I don't grow tomatoes here the next year because of disease, da 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 da. That is all secondary to just that own personal experience that they're going to have. The smells, the sounds, the colors, the textures, everything. It's a full body experience. And like I said, as a teacher, I see it as the ultimate teaching moment. And really, I can just stand aside and let people look. So in my mind, it's a wonderful thing to incorporate education with the farming itself.
Yeah. You reminded me of a former colleague of mine in Ontario is actually currently developing I suppose it's a curriculum of milestones to become environmental stewards. So the idea is that she, with her colleague, they've been mapping out a lifetime, like you're all throughout primary school, elementary, middle school, high school. What are those milestones in your life that just impacted you and changed you forever to become an environmental steward? And that includes in the farm, in the fields, like you said, going on a canoe trip, just picking up a frog, just climbing a tree, like literally every one of those little interactions with nature and out in the environment, it impacts you forever. And so their project right now, and they're hoping that they're going to pilot this in Ontario, is that it would become a part of the Ontario curriculum, where we make sure that like grade 1 kids, they all do an overnight at an outdoor education center. Grade 3 kids, they all do day trips and go skiing in the winter through the forest. You know, like they've mapped it all out through thousands of interviews with people like you and me and anyone who's our environmental stewards. what were those milestones growing up that impacted you? So I think you're onto something about just getting the kids exposed, and not just children, adults. Like a lot of our woofers are young adults in their 20s who've never seen a carrot growing in the dirt. They didn't know that the carrot was in the dirt. One of our woofers, he planted a zucchini in the pot, in the ground. He didn't know to take the pot off of the root mass. No, I'm not joking. Like, I think they just don't, it's for lack of exposure. So, and it's not any fault of their own. I think we've just raised a generation of city kids who don't have these experiences. So I totally agree.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, it's not their fault. It's not society's fault. We've just been growing in a certain direction. And I cannot imagine a society that does not recognize the value in teaching our youngsters and older people about, or giving them the opportunity to have some education and to learn about this. It's only going to make our future better. There's no way it can't. If you give people the opportunity to understand and experience something, they'll grow to love it, and they'll grow to protect it and preserve it and continue it. And I mean, if there's anything better for us than clean food and water and ecosystem, I don't know what it is. I mean, it's certainly not technology. I'll take a clean, natural, deserted island over a city any day, because that's where life is. That's where life begins and can grow and can support other life. You know, cities are great places to live and interesting places to visit, but it's missing that natural organic element. And as cities get bigger, as people become more urbanized, we lose that. We plant the pot in the soil because we have no idea how that whole system works. And that, to me, is a true crime. If you cannot grow something from a seed, you're really lacking an education, a basic education to be able to provide yourself with the things that we need to survive. It's just like being able to make a fire or build a house. These simple kinds of things, you know, take care of yourself when you're sick or injured. These are basic things that people should know about just as they go through life, because these things come up.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that like Zenryu has really made me learn a lot about is, I mean, Zenryu being a Zen Buddhist monk, he's also vegan. And with the whole reincarnation and Buddhist practice, it really is like do no harm to living things. And I've seen him, you know, like not kill that cockroach, not kill that mosquito or whatever, and really protect the biodiversity, the living things in the garden, because they all play a role. And I don't know if you want to speak to that, but Zenryu, I feel through his actions and modeling that, people who visit us, they see that we have frogs living like on our doorstep, and we never we leave them alone, we leave them be, because it's all part of a healthy ecosystem, and it's all because of Zenryu and the do no harm vegan Buddhist Zen Buddhist lifestyle. So do you want to speak to that? But I think that's important too. Like that's all part of being an environmental steward and aware of the importance of biodiversity, the importance of living things in your environment. And just because there's a spider in your living room doesn't mean you should kill it.
No, gosh, no. That's right. That's right. I like that very much. I mean, being a Zen Buddhist monk, being a vegan and an organic farmer, I mean, wow, that's top of the heap right there. You're really caring for so many systems and promoting so much goodness. I think that's fantastic. Yeah. Are you going to write a book someday or something like that?
Also, I'm really like cooking. Like, you know, it's really happy about all the vegetable from the garden. Make a lunch, make a dinner. So much like things I can create too.
He's being modest. He was the head vegan chef at a temple for 20 years. He just shows you, when he says I like to cook, he's actually a professional chef. So I think that also means that we take good care to grow really delicious varieties and veggies. We know like when to harvest so they're not overripe and tough and, you know, stringy. He's really good at that.
That's fantastic.
Also, we try to not waste the food. So even the cracked eggplant, everything, those kind of stuff we are eating.
Oh yeah, that's the farmer's food, the cracked, ugly ones. Yeah, they taste just fine.
That's a big part of the education too. Like we've really, we finally now have a fair amount of buyers who are understanding that B grade is going to feed the world. So B grade is really the answer.
I mean, one of the things that's very different in Japanese supermarkets is, well, two of the things is everything's wrapped in plastic. But the other thing is, how do they get all those carrots to look exactly the same? I mean, how do they do that? They must grow them in a form or something because they're all exactly the same size, color, and shape. It's like, wow, how does that happen? I couldn't do that if I tried.
It's so unnatural. And I mean, that was, especially at the beginning, it was such a pet peeve. It was so difficult to sell our B grade. We ended up giving a lot of it away because we refused to waste anything. But it's gotten better. It really has. Like chefs know that just because the carrot has 2 legs instead of 1, it still tastes delicious and it's still full of nutrition. So, it's getting a little better now, but it's still a work in progress. The whole B grade movement,
and
ugly food.
Also that F1, the cross-pollinated, they make perfect size. Yeah, that we don't like that kind of.
I see.
It's not natural that a watermelon has no seeds. It's just not. It's not the way the world is supposed to work.
Especially the cucumbers. I would say 99% is F1 seed, and no thorns. It's the original cucumber is already has spikes. Then size is different and bended and stuff. Yeah, we grow only those kind of cucumbers. So
that's great.
You can't sell too much.
That's fantastic. Yeah. The carrots are something I'm still learning about. Carrots are not as easy to grow as I give them credit for. I mean, the germination I'm still getting the germination down. I'm on my second round, but beets do pretty well for me. And beets are pretty easy to get heirloom seeds on. I don't see a lot of F1 beets out there. So that's pretty good. But whenever I try to, because I grow about the same number of vegetables as you, I would say, on smaller bits of land and to a lesser degree and at a lesser success rate even. But I often try to choose like the tsurunashi ingen or something like, or tsurunashi endo. I choose the tsuruari and the ones with seeds because I find that they're hardier, they're easier to grow, they're tastier because it's a little bit more labor on the the consumer side. People turn away from them, but I feel like these are often closer to the original varieties. They're stronger, they're better to grow. So yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, and like you said, the seedless watermelon, I would never try to grow that. I would only grow the ones that have seeds that are much more closer to their natural counterparts. I mean, have you ever grown watermelon? Do you guys grow watermelons?
Yeah, every year. If the birds and the animals don't get them first, we sometimes enjoy them.
And so far this year is the best year for the watermelon.
Because of the long rainy season, you got a lot of water and everything.
No, because we know how to fight off the wildlife.
Is it crows? Is it crows that give you a hard time?
We had crows crack them right open. It's unbelievable. So if anyone wants to know, if you want to protect your watermelon, Zenryu he puts these nylon strings across the top of all the gardens. So just above your head and long strings. And that they don't like it because their wings will hit these invisible strings. So they don't like it. But also I cover every individual watermelon with just like scraps of row cover that are like ripped up, and floating row cover of course is used to keep bugs out. But if they can't see the melon, then they don't attack it. And that includes other animals too. So I've done the same with squash. I cover them individually with just a piece of scrap of, even a plastic bag, although I recommend it breathes, so the row cover is probably a bit better. And you just tangle it up in the vines, and then it seems to do the trick. So the animals don't attack it as much.
Well, monkeys go beyond that. I think they would
Wow.
figure out what's under there. That's a different thing. But
Yeah,
I agree. Go ahead.
oh, sorry. Yeah, we had a big disaster last year. First time the inoshishi, the wild boar,
Oh,
and that's the worst.
It ate like
They eat
80% of our squash.
squash, yes.
Like
all the butternuts and
all of it.
Mm.
And of course, wild boar, like the only way to get rid of them is the big traps, you know, and because they'll dig right under your electric fencing, they'll dig right under any kind of fencing you have. They're incredible beasts.
and they come at night, so it's impossible to see them, and they're voracious. I mean, they eat like pigs. I mean, come on, they're insanely gluttonous. And yeah, I've had deer and monkey problems. Inoshishi haven't been around, and I'm not going to say that too loud because they might hear me. But yeah, I don't envy that.
Monkeys are a different dimension. The whole like opposable thumb thing, they can open locks. Like they can open up anything.
And they can jump.
They can jump over anything.
That's right. And they come in groups of 40. That also is a big thing because 40 monkeys can clean you out in an hour, I got to tell you.
Oh, yeah, we got the experience in Tochigi, in Nikko. It's a famous for the monkey egg too.
Oh.
And we started farming that's a hostel. And that was big disaster.
They eat everything.
Just maybe 10 minutes actually.
In 10 minutes. Because they're not individuals, there's a group of them, right? So all of a sudden there's like 30 monkeys descending upon your garden and they clear cut everything. So, as you know.
Yes.
And they have a sentry. They have a sentry sitting out watching the people like, they're coming, get off. You know, no, it's safe. They're so intelligent.
Zenryu used to chase them with firecrackers, like
yeah.
Yeah, you do too, right?
Yeah, that's right. Oh, I chase him with a stick, and I'm a warrior out there with him. Just you got to scare him away. My son was with me last year. No, it was in the springtime. That's right. They came. He was off school, so he was able to come up once a week to the farm, and some monkeys were in the area, and he was in the car with me, and I pulled up next to him, and I just did what I always do. You know, it was my stress release. Like every single angst in my body was just like, ah! And my son said, "Dad, I've never been so scared in my life." You know, and I'm like, that's the point, right? I have to scare them away. And so now he runs around after him too, and he's screaming and yelling. So yeah, it's.
In my experience, the only thing that really works is like super like efficient electric fencing, but really high. And it has to be the mesh kind because they can get through if there's like gaps, you know. Or I've seen people use the frames of greenhouses with chicken wire the whole
chicken
way
wire, sure,
over the whole thing with
That's
like
right.
a lock to get in the door. Those are the
That's
only
right.
two things I've ever seen work for monkeys.
That's
if
correct.
they're
Well, dogs would also work if you have dogs
Oh,
around.
right.
Yeah.
But
actually,
can you leave your
the
dog
village. I don't have a dog because it would be cruel to have a dog up there when I'm not there. And plus, in the winter, so much snow, we'd have to bring it into the city. Yeah, a farm dog in the city, that's a good idea. So no dogs yet until I move up there. But the story of my valley is interesting because it's a small village of about 30 houses, 20 or 30 houses. And it's been depopulated like most rural Japan. And now there's only 5 or 6 houses that are being, you know, that are still residences full time. And one of them belongs to a hunter, and his family has been there for 16 generations. So about 400 years they've lived on the same piece of land, rice farming, some vegetables, and hunting. And so they've always had a big pack of dogs. And until about 5 years ago, those dogs were running free in the village, and they would run up into the mountains and everything else, and they would keep everything away, except for some deer would be able to get in at night, because dogs and humans and monkeys are all diurnal, whereas Inoshishi, the wild boar, and the deer are nocturnal. So some of those things could get in, but the dogs did a really good job of keeping the monkeys away until 5 years ago, when the dogs created a problem by killing another pet dog, and then suddenly had to be chained up. And then the monkeys are like, woohoo! So everybody suffered from that. Yeah, everybody. because nobody had fences. Nobody had fences. And people in the next village would be like, why aren't you having trouble with monkeys? And I'm like, I don't know. Now I know. So they came the next year and oh my gosh. Yeah.
That's too bad. Like in Canada, nobody chains up their dogs on these huge 100-acre farms. The dogs can run free, and it really works to keep the deer away.
The deer, coyotes, things like that. Yeah.
That's definitely an issue here. Like, we would love to have a dog to protect our fields. We don't want to chain up a dog. We just don't.
No.
So unfortunately, we've never gotten one, but they can do a really good job protecting your land if they can be free to run around.
That's right. Now, my tentative idea for plans for my life is within 10 years. I'm living up there. I've got 2 dogs. I've got 3 goats, and I've got about 20 chickens. That's kind of my happy place then. I can really start to do something and have a happy sort of restful life and feel like everything's supporting itself and things like that. So, because I mean, how much time do you spend cutting grass, right? It's just a huge burden to cut the grass around your fields. You got some goats, done. You make a run line for them and they'll do it for you. So, and they process all your other vegetable waste and stuff. So I feel like there's a lot of natural systems out there I'd like to grow into, but it's step by step. I mean, my family doesn't want to live out there, so it's going to be just me. And I want to be in with my family as long as possible. So maybe when he goes off to college or something. So.
Just you mentioned about the goats eating your grass and stuff. One thing we do is we have a push mower that catches all the clippings, and I use all the weed clippings, if they're not being composted, I use them as a mulch on our perennial herb beds. So like rosemary, lemongrass, we collect them, and then I put like this thick so it keeps the weeds down.
We put between the bed.
Oh yeah, in the path too.
Oh, in the walkways, okay.
Yeah, we'll put like a really thick layer of these grass trimmings right in the path, and it over time, of course, adds nutrients to the soil as well.
Oh yeah, no, it's a mulch too, so it's great.
It's a natural, non-plastic mulch that eventually I'd like to wean off of all the plastic mulch because like I can't stand it. But
me too.
There's just no really great alternative at the moment. I'm hoping someone's gonna come up with like a hemp mulch that biodegrades over like 2 years. Like, wouldn't that be awesome? We could use that.
It would be. Yeah, like you said about COVID, I had full-time volunteers for 3 years, and this year it dried up about a month and a half ago. So nobody's staying up there. And so I've felt the impact this month with the drought we've been going through, and keeping up with the watering has been really tough, but also the weeding. I mean, because of the drought, there's been a lot less weeds, but they grow, and then we have a few rainy days, and boom, it's like, oh my gosh. So we've been able to go plastic free on the beds for the past two or 3 years because of it, because of the volunteers staying on top of it. But this year I feel the real crunch of it, because like, gosh, I wish I'd put down plastic mulch on the beds, because we have the 10-year plastic on the walkways. So, that's something that I can accept, but having to haul away those bags of plastic, oh, it's so depressing at the end of the year. But this year, it would have been a good idea to have it, because like you said, you just can't keep up with them. The weeds here are just too strong, Yeah. Do you guys get horsetail?
Yeah, but it's not a huge problem, horsetail. Just a little bit. Why, you have a problem with horsetail?
We get a lot of horsetail, really, really a lot of horsetail, which is a very nice medicinal herb, but it's no good on the farm, and it does create a lot of problems. Yeah, we get horsetail. Go ahead.
Root is spreading everywhere.
That's right. Yeah. It's actually a very ancient plant. It's one of the oldest plants. So it's an interesting thing, but when it's choking out your radishes, you're like, no, I don't want to have to pull up these roots because they pull up the radishes and everything else. So it's tough.
I always say with weeds, they're telling a story, like they're teaching us something. And horsetail is a water-loving plant that tends to grow in wet areas. So meaning wherever you're finding you're being choked out by horsetail, it probably needs better drainage. Or, so if not canals, like drainage channels, maybe you need to rototill deeper and add more carbon-based, or humus. So like compost to create a little more tilth, like I guess fluffier, tilthier soil. So, you know, I always tell people, read your weeds. They're telling you something. Like, you know, dokudami. What's dokudami in English? I don't even know. It's that really strong, pungent herb that you can make tea with it. Do you know it's got like a red stem, a broad leaf? Anyway,
It's medicinal.
It's medicinal. It's good for your digestion, all this. But dokudami is a soil buster. Like it will attack, it'll grow through super hard clay soil. So actually it's doing you a favor, and it's telling you that that too needs a little more humus in the ground, in the soil. So anyway, I know that they can be a nuisance, but it is telling you something.
Oh, I like that. That's great. Taking a negative, turning it into a positive like that. That's a wonderful idea. I'm going to have to think about that and look into it. Yeah, because like I said, I'm growing on a recovered rice field. I do have a lot of irrigation issues, and it's caused a lot of problems. But for me, it's a lot of Suzuki still, because the surrounding, the pampas grass, the surrounding areas are just all wild with Suzuki.
Just a minute, what's Suzuki?
Like we have the roots into the greenhouse, and
oh
even
yeah,
break the plastic.
We have something similar in Ontario called twitch grass, and the root is super sharp, and it'll go right through the greenhouse plastic. Is that what you're talking about?
I guess so. Yeah, it's called Suzuki or pampas grass, and the roots are about 30 centimeters below the ground. They're called tap roots. It's just a long root, and then a plant will come up every meter or so. And so even if you take that plant out, the tap root continues. So
yeah,
it's a real problem.
But that one too can be a soil buster. It can break up that really hard, heavy clay. Like you said, you're growing in tumble, right? In rice fields, which tends to be heavy clay. But yeah, that's hard to stay on top of, because you've got to dig extra deep. I know.
No, it's horrible. So I've had to do raised beds as well. And what I did with the rice field is I like building raised beds with actual frames around them. And there's a sawmill in our area who up until last year was still producing a lot of offcuts, and he would give me 4 tons of offcuts for $50. And so I had 4 tons of offcuts. I built I built 9 beds. Each bed is about 150 centimeters wide and 15 meters long. And then I filled those with 10 tons of compost from Shizuhara. They have a compost station. And 4 tons of zoo manure from Kyoto Zoo. And I used about 3 tons of cardboard. So I first took the cardboard and I covered the existing beds, and then the zoo manure and the compost. And last year it was just kind of a learning year, but this year everything has just been super ganky and really great. And then I just use compost teas and things like that to further up my fertility and everything like that. But the water issue has been the main thing. So I've been thinking about how to do something about that. And I was thinking about adding sand until I came across this idea of incorporating the rice husks into the soil themselves. So my rototiller broke 2 years ago. So I've been everything by hand since then. But I'm thinking of investing in a new one just to incorporate this rice husk. And since we got the stimulus check for $1,000, I think maybe that's going to be my new rototiller.
The Abe money.
Yeah, the Abe money. That's right.
Yeah, I think soil health, like it's the most important thing you can be thinking about when you're, thinking about the garden health and your vegetables. So it's worth the investment. Whatever your angle, whatever approach you take, it's worth it.
Oh, I totally agree. Having healthy soil is the key number one thing. That and water. So, Well, we've gone about 30 minutes over, but much to my pleasure, I haven't even watched the time pass. I just happened to look at the clock and it's already 10:30. And I hate to say goodbye, but maybe we should just wrap up here. And if there's anything else you'd like to say or ask before we go.
I mean, thank you to you, Chuck, for finally connecting with us. And yeah, it's really great having a nice conversation, farmer to farmer. It's good to make those
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I'm definitely going to come out and see you guys. I know I've said this 3 times already, but I'm definitely going to come out. 40 minutes, I should be able to make it out there. You know, it's not that bad.
The thing is, we don't know when we're leaving. So it might be tomorrow, it might be next spring. So
actually, do you know the road from the Kutsuki to the back road in the mountain road?
Yes.
To the Keihoku.
Okay. Yeah. Through Kurama.
Actually, north of Kurama. It's really like a narrow. It's have to over the toge and stuff, but it's really shortcut.
Through Kuta.
Yeah, we went to the actually last year. I went to the Yamamoto. I took that road.
Okay.
And really fun drive too, and takes about 40 minutes actually, 50 minutes.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, I'm going to find you on a map, and I'm going to make this happen this year. I promise.
I would like to visit too.
Yeah.
That would be great. Yeah. For sure. You won't learn anything, but you can have some different perspectives in the mountain.
And actually, anyone watching this, feel free to send us a text or like you can ask questions or whatever. Give us advice on our Facebook page, because we're happy to share knowledge. And I love the knowledge exchange. There's always something to learn. We are lifelong learners. So every year there's a new challenge. So we have to keep growing, right? And learning. So.
Right. That's one of the things I love about farming too. I can already feel it is a lifelong learning process. We'll never, ever figure it all out. And that's really rewarding. Yeah.
And you just reminded me, here's an analogy. So imagine you're a professional piano player. You might practice a piece 1,000 times before you perform, right? I've literally only grown tomatoes 20 times in my life. So if you think about like how long it takes to become so quote unquote expert, it's a lifetime. Like I've only had 20 experiences growing tomatoes or whatever, how many years I've been growing.
Yeah.
So it's totally different to become a really great farmer. Like it just takes forever, your whole life.
Also different location, different technique.
Yes, that's right. I mean, when you move to Canada, you're going to be starting all over again in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Yeah, first time we started here, I learned a lot from the elder people. Like 8 years old, 9 years old.
All the neighbors.
Yeah, all the neighbors.
Yep.
Yeah.
Me too. Everybody around me is that age, and they're brilliant farmers. Unfortunately, most of them are on JA, so they spray chemicals and things like that. But still, they have some insights, and they have some good, deep knowledge, which is very important, I think. I would love for this kind of a conversation like we've had to continue and to begin to incorporate some of those people, because I think that wisdom that they have is going to be lost otherwise. I mean, some of the real tips and tricks that they've learned from their parents and grandparents that's been passed down for generations, they might be the last person to remember and know those things. And I think that sort of knowledge would be just a crime to lose. I really hope to preserve it in some way. Yeah. But today was fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me. I've learned a lot and I've enjoyed it, and getting to know you guys. Like we said, we've been trying to get together forever and have a conversation. So this was great. And I hope everybody who's joined us today, thank you for joining us and being a part of this. And if you liked what you saw, please ask or comment. And reach out to Zenryu and Ava at Hello Farm Organics, or myself at Midori Farm. And whenever you have the chance, try to visit a local farmer and learn some more, plant some more, grow some more, eat some more local organic food, because I think that's one of the ways an everyday person can really help participate in slowing our impact on the environment and helping to produce a better tomorrow. Is by just simply voting with your money to support somebody who's growing organically, especially if it's local. So thanks again for joining us. And Ava and Zenryu, arigatou gozaimashita. Thank you very much.
Everybody, thank you for joining us.
Okay. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for being here today.